Hello, and welcome to PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people just like you, whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis.
I'm Lita.
I'm Ron.
And I'm high on life.
Or Jean.
Oh, yeah, that too.
We're collectively the hosts of PodcastDX.
This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider for any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regime. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast.
Today's show on medical marijuana is broken down into segments. First, we're going to quickly run through a bit of terminology and general information about cannabis. Then we'll interview Meg, a patient for whom medical marijuana was recently prescribed.
The term medical marijuana, or medical cannabis as it's referred to in Illinois, refers to using the whole, unprocessed marijuana plant or its basic extracts to treat symptoms of illness or other medical conditions.
Although 28 states and at least one territory have legalized medical cannabis, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has not recognized or approved the marijuana plant as medicine. However, the scientific study of the chemicals in marijuana, called cannabinoids, has led to at least 2 FDA-approved medications that derived from the cannabis plant. Little hypocritical there then. Additionally, prescription medications derived from cannabis and synthetic forms of cannabinoids are available in other countries. The FDA requires carefully conducted studies, called clinical trials, in hundreds to thousands of human subjects to determine the benefits and risks of a possible medication. So far, researchers haven't conducted enough large-scale clinical trials that show that the benefits of the marijuana plant, as opposed to its cannabinoid ingredients, outweigh its risks in patients it's meant to treat. A CBD-based liquid drug to treat certain forms of childhood epilepsy is being tested in clinical trials, but isn't yet FDA approved.
There are many chemicals in the plants that we use as medicine.
Examples: morphine, codeine, nicotine, quinine, caffeine, atropine, willow bark, aspirin, just to name a few.
Nicotine is a medicine?
Well, that's a whole nother subject, but yes, it can be.
Nabiximols or Sativex is just one prescription medication that was derived from the cannabis plant. It is an aerosolized mist for oral administration and contains a near 1-to-1 ratio of CBD and THC.
Okay, before we get into what CBD and THC are, let's run through a few basics. Cannabis sativa is an annual herbaceous flowering plant originally indigenous to Asia. There's a bit of a controversy in terms of the scientific classification. For our purposes, there are 3 subspecies of cannabis: Cannabis sativa, Cannabis indica, and Cannabis ruderalis. And I may not have pronounced that correctly. Each of these subspecies has its own characteristics.
Right. Sativa strains are thought to be invigorating, improve energy, increase focus. They tend to have a spicier and sweet smell. Generally, they have a higher THC to CBD ratio.
On the other hand, indica strains are thought to have a more sedative effect. They are said to reduce nausea, increase appetite, have a more skunky scent, and typically have a higher CBD to THC percentage.
As with most things, to learn about a subject, you need to learn the specialized language and terminology associated with the subject. When it comes to cannabis, medical or otherwise, there are some terms that are good to know.
For example, we've been mentioning CBD, which is cannabidiol, which lacks the intoxicating effects of THC. Unlike THC, CBD is a cannabinoid, I can say that one, that doesn't make people high. It may be useful in reducing pain and inflammation, controlling epileptic seizures, and possibly even treating mental illness and addictions.
So CBD is a good one.
Well, yeah.
Well, Yeah, not as much of a high.
No, yeah, it's not meant to give you a high.
It's only for the medicinal.
Right, or that intoxicating effect.
Got it. The body also produces its own cannabinoid chemicals. They play a role in regulating pleasure, memory, thinking, concentration, body movement, awareness of time, appetite, pain, and the senses like taste, touch, smell, hearing, sight.
Right. And THC, which is a tetrahydrocannabinol. THC is a lipid, and it's found in cannabis. THC can increase appetite and reduce nausea, and it also can reduce or decrease pain and inflammation, such as swelling and redness too, and it can help with muscle control problems.
And intoxication is defined as a temporary state of diminished physical and mental control. Some typical intoxicating agents are alcohol, liquor, certain drugs, or other substances.
Right. So we said like THC has an intoxicating effect.
Right.
Okay.
So the term mind-altering refers to chemicals which produce mood changes or which give you a sense of heightened awareness.
Okay. And to wrap our segment up, psychoactive chemicals are substances which have a profound or significant effect on the mental processes.
You can take medicinal cannabis orally, topically, transdermally, or sublingually, which is under the tongue, or it can be inhaled. Allow me to introduce Meg. Meg is an artist who resides in Illinois. She has recently been prescribed medical marijuana.
Hi, Meg.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
In some states, you simply need to take your state-issued ID card and a prescription to a dispensary in order to obtain medical cannabis. Is that the case in Illinois?
Not exactly. The Medical Cannabis Patient Registry Program allows people who are diagnosed with a debilitating medical condition and their caregivers to register with the Illinois Department of Public Health in order to obtain access to the cannabis for medical use. So in Illinois, you need to apply for the Medical Cannabis Registry ID card.
Oh, okay.
Well, how does somebody apply for the ID card?
There are 5 basic routes to which you can apply for the card. The process is a bit different for terminal patients, minors, and for veterans who are receiving treatment at a VA facility.
And you don't fall into any of those categories, do you?
No, I am in the 3rd category of everyone else.
So what's the process like for everyone else?
Well, you can either work through the paperwork on your own, contact the center or your local health department for assistance to complete the process.
And what is that process like?
I went with a company that walks you through the process. I had my first appointment with a physician on January 30th, and from there I had to do a video appointment, which I had on February 5th. The average wait time to receive the card once in the mail, once you've completed all your paperwork, is about 8 to 12 weeks, and mine took 12 weeks. So I got my Medical Cannabis Registry identification card on April 16th.
Okay, so it can take a while to have your paperwork processed by the state.
If you're working on the paperwork on your own, it's a bit more complicated. First of all, in Illinois, you have to be a resident of Illinois.
The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club.
Okay, go ahead, Meg.
You cannot have any prior felony drug convictions. You cannot be a firefighter, correctionals officer, active duty law enforcement officer, or correctionals probation officer. If you have a permit to drive a school bus or CDL, you're not eligible for the current state program. And of course, you must be diagnosed with the qualifying condition.
But you can, that's not excluding too many things.
Yeah.
How can someone find out if they have a qualifying condition?
In Illinois, you can find a list of qualifying conditions on the Illinois Department of Public Health's website, which is dphillinois.gov.
Okay.
All right, so what's next?
In Illinois, you need a physician license in the state of Illinois to complete the 3-page physician written certification form. And here the state's instructions are a bit hazy.
How do you mean?
Well, on the physician written certification form, it says the completed signed form should be given to the patient and submitted along with their other paperwork by the patient.
Okay.
But in the application for qualifying patient registry identification card instructions, it states that the physician should complete their portion of the paperwork and mail it directly to the IDPH's Division of Medical Cannabis.
That's conflicting. So then what's next?
You need to complete the applications form, select a dispensary, and fill out the medical cannabis dispensary selection form. Pay an application fee, which varies from $50 to $250.
Oh.
Mail the completed forms along with a color copy of your Illinois state and federally issued ID. Color photograph similar to a passport photo, a copy of 2 documents that establish your residency, like utilities, bills, and leases, and get a fingerprint-based background check, and submit the receipt for the fingerprint scan along with everything else to the DPH.
Wow, the grass is certainly greener in states that only require a state ID and a prescription.
Ba-dum-bum. Yeah, you do the hokey pokey.
So then you take your card to the dispensary and pick up your medical cannabis?
Yeah, basically I'm allotted 2.5 ounces every 2 weeks, so they keep track of it on their computers, what I purchase, how much the amount is, and it tracks the weeks.
Okay, sure. See.
I'm exhausted just hearing about the process. I mean, seriously, that's a lot of steps to go through.
It's the state of Illinois.
Yeah, I guess. Has the medical cannabis help ease the symptoms of your medical condition?
Part of why I started to do it was I was having trouble sleeping, and with my doctor, we decided that the first priority would be to get me a full night's sleep.
That sounds nice.
It would be beneficial, especially since at the time I was going through my final semester of
Finals
school.
of college, yeah.
Wow.
So sleep would be very nice.
Yeah.
And then from there, it also it helps with my pain, my depression, and anxiety. I mean, just kind of everything. I call it the wonder plant.
Right. And yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for joining us today, Meg, and for the insight into this incredibly difficult application process in the state of Illinois.
Yeah, thank you, Meg.
That wraps up part 1 of 2 for our podcast about medical cannabis. Join us next week when we'll interview Dr. Weil and get a physician's view of cannabis as medicine.
If our listeners have any questions or comments related to today's show, they can contact us at podcastdx@yahoo.com, through our website, podcastdx.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram.
And if you have a moment to spare, please give us a 5-star review on the iTunes podcast app.
And we'd like to thank those of you who have already done so. Till next week.
Bye-bye.